Hey everybody, welcome back to SCGCON Cincinnati. I'm Tanning Grace. I'm joined by Jeff Foster. Jeff, we're going to be covering another round here. We're going to be starting off with Legacy, and we have got a spicy one.
Yo, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this Jeskai deck.
Yeah, so we're going to be covering Jerry Thompson again. He's going to be going up against martial authors here. I'm actually a close friend of Marshall's, big fan of his. I'm going to warn you now. His deck is going to be the most expensive version of every card that you could possibly have. If it's been capable to get into his hands. He is one of those legacy players. Like, I doubt any of the cards will be in English. They'll probably all be foil, and they will all be super awesome looking. Now, we were talking about this Jeskai control deck. It has some stuff that you're going to be expecting, right? You have Narset, you have Teferi, you have Ponder, Force of Will, Swords, etc. Um, there's also 4 Staff of the Storyteller in this, and 2 Comet Stellar Pump. That card I never thought I'd have to actually do coverage for, and I've read the card. I'm still not sure exactly of the things that it does, Jeff.
Comet Stellar Pup is really cool. Honestly, this entire deck is really cool. But so it's 4 mana. It has 5 loyalty, and you have a single loyalty ability that you activate by just rolling a die. Um, if it's 1 or 2, then it gets 2 loyalty. You make 2 squirrels that have hastes. If it's a 3, then you get to return any card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. It's not just creatures; it's any card with mana value, like that brainstorm there, maybe a destroyed Staff of the Storyteller. 4 or 5 means it makes him go down 2, and then he gets to nug whatever for the damage equal to the number of loyalty before the -2 happens. And if you roll a 6, you get to do it twice. You get to go again. Um,
Nice.
it's honestly, I think the card is really cool. The only problem with it is it was printed almost at the exact same time as Minskin Boo.
Oh yeah, sure. So this was the one that people kind of forgot. It's definitely way cuter. Well, actually, I was gonna say it's way cuter than Minskin Boo, and I'm not even sure that's 100% true because like I'm a dog person, but like it's got a hamster on it, so that's pretty awesome too. I only call it a peak of Marshall's hand, but I've already seen a foil brainstorm, and the thing I'm the most interested in, I can't wait to see what duels he's playing with. 'Cause,
Well, they're they're all currently face down, so
yeah, I was gonna say Marshall is a man of pure class, and it's always just so beautiful to see his stuff, his cards get played out.
that's not Guru. I didn't. Those aren't Guru basics.
They are not. I wouldn't be surprised if he has it, but they're probably just his favorite ones. But
That,
yeah, that is a Triome, people. Don't adjust your set. This is a legacy, but he has 1 Triome in his deck. So this is all 3 colors of his deck. You saw Jerry kind of pause there, like, wait, what's going on? And Marshall's got the wry smile too, because if you've ever played against Marshall, yeah, he can play the good decks well, right? The very known decks, but every now and then he's the kind of person, he's a little bit of a wild card at times. Like he'll show up with a deck like this where you're like, wait, what's going on? And you're gonna have to read a card in his deck.
so I actually really do like Triomes or their equivalents from New Capenna in 3-color decks. You have every once in a while you get in the situation that Marshall's in where it ends up in your hand and you're playing it tapped on turn 1 and not doing anything, which is turn 1 is usually one of the most important turns in Legacy. But I think the ability to have access to all of your colors it can be worth that risk, especially in a control deck. But I think even in slightly more aggressive decks, I think people really underestimate how often they lose access to their colors of mana.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a little embarrassing when it gets wastelanded, right? Like it comes into play untapped. I mean, tapped it is the one thing, but it's just a one of, right? So like the opportunity cost isn't super high. So like you said, yeah, I think it's pretty great. It's 1 land that taps for all the colors in his deck. He doesn't have too many doubles in his deck, right? Like, he's got Narset, and I think that's about it, other than Supreme Verdict in the main. There's a Force of Negation as well, but there's only a few things here. Plus, he's got activated abilities on Staff of Storyteller, which cost white. So his deck can be color, like it can be resource heavy on colors. So
Yeah,
yeah, I like this, especially with the way the format's going. Like, yeah, we're seeing these decks like Dimir Dust Shadow become popular, like very popular, and they have Wasteland. But with so many people moving away from Delver decks, you've actually seen Wasteland go down just a tiny bit in this format.
Yeah, it is a little embarrassing. Sometimes you do get wastelanded, but often wastelands are cast as spell or kind of treated as spells. If you play it tapped on your first turn and then it gets wastelanded, yeah, that's a little embarrassing. It kind of sucks, but we're both in the exact same situation we were before. But most of the time, this Triumph is going to enter the battlefield at end of turn, and if there's something more important that needs to be cast, then you just get a dual land instead. Like it's basically paying one mana to ensure that you have access to all of your colors. Um,
Jerry with a handful of spells here, maybe thinking about playing this grief, just to be like, what the hell is going on, Marshall? Like, I'm sure these guys know each other. They're from around the same area in the United States. They probably played against each other growing up because they're both super old school players. They've been around for, when I say old school, I don't necessarily mean old. They've been around the block. Like
yeah,
Marshall's played forever, Jerry's played forever. These two guys have probably played more Magic than like 99.9% of the population that plays Magic. And the jig's kind of up now. Jared can
yeah,
see what's going on in Marshall's deck. I mean, he probably had an idea. It's some form of, we call these blue soup, miracles without miracles, those type of decks. But none of the weird stuff has shown up yet. He doesn't see Staff of the Storyteller yet. He doesn't see Comet. But these are cards I would very much expect my opponent who's played 3 lands and done nothing besides Swords Me.
yeah,
This is the kind of hand I would think they have. So
yeah,
those
yeah.
are the reasons I would go ahead and select that beautiful brainstorm.
Yeah, if my opponent plays a Rogren Triumph on turn one, and then the following 2 turns casts 0 spells, I'm probably going to look for access to their hand as quickly as possible.
One
Um,
of one of my absolute favorite plays of the I almost said scam deck because it feels like scam. The Dimir Death Shadow deck can do is it can grief you, but then it can reanimate very quickly. This is why you're seeing them go up to 3 and 4 reanimates, is because of the fact that you have such this awesome secondary play with like grief. Yeah, usually when you're reanimating, you're trying to reanimate, a big dumb idiot, right? Some 6/5 troll or some Gristle brand. But this deck can play out at a tempo way too and take away your hand. And this kind of backs up the Thoughtseize plans, backs up the tempo plan. And I love the fact that this deck has this play line along with it as well. Because you're going to grief your opponent multiple times in a game. Having the information is huge, and then taking their important cards is huge as well. Like you see the Brainstorm and the Teferi getting taken from Marshall here.
yeah, seeing this, it kind of turns it into the version of the deck that I want to be taking to my legacy FNM at least, right? Where like I people have been playing Street Wraith for a while, and it goes down the Death Shadow plan where you're paying life to you're basically using it as Gitaxian Probe back when we used to pay 2 life for Gitaxian Probe and that card was legal in the format. But like that becomes your reanimate target. But when you reanimate it, you're just paying 5 life to get a 4/4. Where what Jerry's doing with grief is a little bit more of a controlling plan. You do have to exile a card from your hand to get this a bit what is basically unmask, right? But then you get to reanimate your unmask and turn it into a double Thoughtseize, which like I was talking about in at the beginning of the day, it's very similar to the turn one land Dark Ritual Hymn to Turok, or Duress plus Hymn to Turok that we used to see years and years ago, where you just pick apart their entire hand. You don't get the opportunity to just like randomly scam them out of the 2 lands that are in their hand. But who cares if there's 2 lands in their hand when those are the only 2 cards left in their hand?
So plus, getting the body is pretty awesome too, right? Like you just get this 3/2 as well.
It just destroyed that Narset. So I think that's also a reason to play Grief as one of your discard spells.
Yeah, I'm also a little disappointed in Marshall here that he doesn't have the, what do they call, like the anime planeswalkers. It's not the anime Narset, and maybe this is the one that he likes. I've actually got anime Narsets, not foil ones, because that's a little too rich for my blood. But absolutely big fan. Now it looks like Jerry's gonna add a third threat to the board here. Technically a second one. The Orcish Bowmaster tokens sitting around. So Marshall going to be looking for another source of plowshares here. Maybe one of the Supreme Verdicts. Maybe one of the Stefaris. Just something to be able to answer this board quite a bit. Let's see if this Murktide even resolves. Marshall's still waiting just a second here. So
Yeah, I mean currently staring down 4 power at 16 life. We don't really know what is in Marshall's hand right now, but we do know that he has access to Supreme Verdict. So if this Murktide region is resolving, I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of sweeper.
Yeah, it
Uh,
looks like that is a Shark Typhoon, a Prismatic Ending, a Force of Will, a Tundra, and what was that one called? Prismatic
Prismatic,
Vista?
yeah,
Yeah, that's just well, there's too many prismatics going on. So it does look like the tokens gonna get taken care of here for one
yeah.
mana.
It looks like we're the plan is for Marshall to just deal with these threats one at a time. Obviously, less efficient than just spiking one of your 2 Supreme Verdicts, but
Yeah, I think this
I
is yeah, him just trying to play a little bit of a slower game. He's gonna be able to cycle his Shark Typhoon here, draw an extra card, put a blocker into play for the Murktide Regent. We'll see if the blocker resolves or not. Like that ability is gonna resolve. But Jerry's got a bunch of fatal pushes in his deck that have no other targets. So he would be pretty incentivized to fatal push this blocker if that were to happen here. And Marshall wants to get deeper into his deck, maybe trying to find one of those Supreme Verdicts, find a Swords of Plowshares, find a Teferi, something to answer at least one of the threats that's in play. So Jerry's gonna say, okay. So yeah, I think he's gonna do fatal pushes before the draw happens. Or there we go, the Bowmaster to take down the 1/1 shark. So maybe a small misstep here from Marshall for he didn't want to crack this fetch, but making the 1/1 here is gonna come back and bite him just a little bit here. Because this is a 1/1 shark, right?
so I mean it doesn't matter too much because uh if he does it for 2, then the Bowmaster is going to trigger on the draw anyway, and
Okay.
take out that 2/2 shark. But um it is unfortunate. I don't want to say Marshall is choked on mana.
No, you're
Looking
you're
live.
you're 100%. Yeah, you're 100% right there. I always think it's the second draw of your turn clause that they had for like a year that mattered. I forgot it's when you draw outside of your draw step.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Uh, yeah. I don't want to say Marshall is choked on mana, but just slightly less mana than he needs to do the things that he wants to do. And it looks like Jerry's gonna end that one very quickly.
Yep. So Jerry's up 1-0 here. Marshall drawing too many counter spells a little late there. The Force of Negation and the Force of Will, not good to deal with the problems that are on the board. But Marshall's going to have a decent bit of stuff in his sideboard here. Taking a look, there are 4 Pyroblasts, though. This is one of the things I do like about the Dimir Shadow deck is that these 4 Pyroblasts, yeah, they're good against like Murktide and they're good against the cantrips, right? But then it's not like when you're playing against Delver where it also hits most of the threats, right? And it does look like Marshall's gonna be taking out his Force of Wills here. I think I saw some Blood Moons maybe as well making their way into the deck here, and that's a big play that could steal the game from Jerry here.
Yeah, I do like the Pyroblasts, and I do like Jerry's version because those Pyroblasts are always just going to be staring at you, right? They're like, "Hey, just board me in, just board me in." He's got Force of Wills, he's probably got a Delver in the deck. Like you saw Murktide Regent, these Pyroblasts are going to be good, and then 4 of them get boarded in, and you die to a Death Shadow, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly right. Like you're gonna be staring at a Pyroblast, looking at 2 black threats from your opponent, and being like, well, crap.
Right. It's very interesting with how these things play out where there's so many good answers, there's so many hard answers, but it's very possible to get tricked into boarding in these more efficient, more narrow answers, and getting and losing the game because of it. And
Yeah,
I'm interested to see how Marshall boards because with this being closed deck list, it's not even like he's operating on imperfect information.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
they believe that Pyroblasts are going to be good against a large swath of Jerry's threats when they're just not.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're bringing in Pyroblast in this matchup against the Dimir Shadow list, you can't get too greedy with it. Like, unless you're just like, I can't beat a Murktide, and you have to hold on to there. You're going to trade it for like practically anything you can, which is generally going to be, a Brainstorm or Ponder, which is pretty good. I jokingly forgot to mention this, though we do see a few English cards here in Jerry's deck. This might be the matchup in the room where it would be the hardest to actually read the cards in play because both of these players are very much known for not playing English cards. So like besides the dual lands in Jerry's deck and like it looks like to be possibly the Murktides and the Orcish Bowmasters, which might not even be his. I will say these are some of the only English cards that we have in the entire match.
Which is unfortunate because do you think Jerry is going to need to read Comet Stellar Pup?
That one, yes. I'm not gonna look. I'm not saying Gary doesn't know that one. There's a chance that he does, right? But I'm telling you right now, my opponent played Comet and it wasn't in English. I would immediately be like, I need the Oracle text on this card. I'm sorry. Like I don't know what this does at all. I know it has to do with weird. It's from what Unfinity, I think is the name of that one.
Yeah, and it's nothing against Jerry. It's just if Jerry is going to have to read Comet Stellar Pup, I'm not going to feel bad about anyone else having to read that card, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I definitely would. Even after reading it, what 7 minutes ago or whatever. At this point, I'm still not sure exactly what that card does.
yeah, I would want to know which number does what.
Yeah, you tell me. I'll just believe you. Yeah. I
But
will
yeah,
tell you this: if there's anybody in the room that you can explicitly trust, it's these two guys. They're like I said, just stellar pillars of the community that have been around for I almost said forever. I don't want to say that because I don't want to date everyone involved. And that's just I keep doing it to myself. They've been around longer than I have, and I've been around forever. So we'll put it that way.
yeah, same.
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
All right, looks like we're gonna have a brief cut over to modern, see how Mr. Shields is doing over here. This 5-color creativity deck. Looks like he's playing against Rakdos Scam and Ben Weinberg. This is
yeah.
a this is a match of pure heavy hitters, by the way. This is two of the better teams that are left in this tournament, with some real results on both sides.
Yeah, it looks like Ben Weinberg's Thoughtseize is showing a Leyline Binding, a Creativity, and a Spell Pierce.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the one of the newer spell pierces from what is it, Secret Lair?
It
I can't keep up
is
from where they're from anymore. Yeah.
it is from 2021. It was one of the it wasn't the first set of Secret Layers, but it was like the next one. Oh,
All right,
okay.
looks like the legacy players are ready to go, so we're gonna go back over to that because this is on our X channel. We're covering some paper legacy. So it looks like we have the old Rock and Triumph into Wasteland, the thing we talked about here at the beginning of game one. And is that a foil retro Potter? Be still, my heart, Marshall Arthurs. Your deck is gorgeous. Whew, you can't
That is
see it at
so
home, but
cool.
I am fanning myself right now. Whew. And
Yeah,
that's
but
also a non-English one too. Good lord, Marshall.
this is way too much. But
Yeah.
we do
Is
live
it
in
is
this.
it is it just me or is it getting hot in here, Jeff? It's getting warm.
Yeah, we kind of ended up in the exact same situation that we were talking about last game, where you play this tapped Rogan Triumph on turn one. Jerry wastelands it, but it feels a little embarrassing. But you're just like, okay, well, look, we're gonna do turn one all over again.
Yeah, looks like we're just starting back over. So it's like one of those. I'll stop harping on the cost of the cards. One of those beautiful brainstorms is going to get cast from Marshall here, and there is a blood moon in Marshall's hands. You're going to see him start to move towards that play, and hopefully that's going to be what evens up the match from here. And that's going to be the most important thing here. And I wonder if Jerry is up to the task here to be able to answer it because it's going to need to be answered right away. Because after that happens, there's no more casting spells for Jerry out of his deck.
Yeah. I'm curious if I would be surprised if Jerry didn't have any counter magic for it, but I'm curious to see how many pieces of permission Jerry has for this upcoming blood moon.
And I say there's no more casting spells. Jerry does have one of each basic in his deck, and it does look like he went ahead and got one. Heads up play from Jerry here. I forgot that he also had a swamp. I was like, he might have an island, but he has one of each, which is huge for him here, especially with the second fetch in play. So this is actually, he might just be completely insulated from the blood moons here. And here's what I was talking about earlier with that Pyroblast on that brainstorm. When you have Pyroblast in your deck and most of your opponent's threats are black, you need to just be firing it off when you can, getting all the value for it that you can.
And honestly, hitting brainstorm when your opponent has a fetch land on the battlefield, like that's the thing that you might even just want to do in general, regardless of like you would want to cast spell pierce or minor misstep or whatever on that brainstorm.
Now, this may look like this is pretty good for Jerry, and this is, right? Like, he can go get his swamp here. Marshall doesn't know that. Like, a lot of us will play this one basic. Yeah, Jerry has the second one. You see Marshall's not really surprised. And Jerry's like, yeah, this resolves. I've got one of each basic. You can see the shrug there in the wry smile for Marshall. This still has some big parts in this matchup, right? Jerry still has Death Shadow in his deck. I don't know how many copies he has left, because he's not going to be taking damage from Marshall, but he has to have some amount of ways to get his life total up. I was gonna say it doesn't work under Blood Moon, right? You can't shock in anymore just because the card doesn't have the text, or can you still take two?
No, you can't. You can't take
You
two.
can't, yeah, right. So you can't
No,
take two, right?
yeah, you can't take two. It has no text as it
Right.
enters the battlefield.
And so,
Um,
so there's that, and then it's also going to bottleneck him on mana here. So he can't ever play like two black spells in the same turn, or two blue spells in the same turn. He can't cast, Murktide. He can't hard cast Grief anymore. So while this looks like it's still a decent spot for Jerry because he has one of each basic, yeah, that's good for him. He can still cast some of the stuff, but it is going to cut off a lot of his avenues of play in this matchup. He can't even cast Force of Will, if the game goes super long.
yeah, I was going to say that sometimes the permission that you have against Blood Moon is just superior deck building and a couple of fetch lands, but we were talking in round 9 about how the deck does not have a lot of uses for uh, uh, colorless mana, much less generic mana, right? Um, there's we'll use mountains to cast Orcish Bowmasters. We'll use them to cycle trolls that we can reanimate later, but that even doing that, you're going to end up searching for what are effectively mountains again. Um, and Jerry's going to be basically bottlenecked to only being able to cast one removal spell and one card selection spell per turn.
Mhm. Yeah, the only way Griefs are getting into play are those reanimates pretty much from here on out. Now, it does look like that was a Teferi for Marshall. It was met by Force of Will, pitching Force of Will. So Jerry's going to, looks like, be mostly in on trying to win with just this Grief attacking for the rest of the game. And we'll have to see if that's going to be able to get through. Now, Ponder was pulled off the top of the deck for Jerry here, so maybe some selection going on, maybe find another threat. But like I said, this is going to bottleneck Marshall quite a bit. And I liked it playing just the draw go game here from Jerry. Looks like a cycle of address down is going to happen here as well for Marshall.
Yeah, 5 turns is a lot of turns, especially when you draw Brainstorm.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It
that's
looks like what is that?
three prismatic ending. Is that 3 prismatic endings off the top?
Three of a kind dealer. What do I win?
I think you win the game.
Yeah. So I think
Uh,
it's a staff of the ages as well as a shark typhoon. Yeah, let's see. Let's make sure we play the right one there. Yeah, the other white card.
okay, we have a face up prismatic ending. Maybe it's on purpose. Maybe you play the one face up. So Jerry,
He
it's like,
doesn't
oh,
expect the second and third one. Yeah.
yeah, you never play around the third one, especially when the first one's already face up, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, let's say the fetch land play being tapped for mana, you can't clear the top of the deck here, so those prismatics will be drawn by Marshall. But I don't think he cares too much about it. Like once he if he can find a way to deal with this grief, that's the biggest thing. He has to make sure that he can not die to this card. He has every other threat in Jerry's deck pretty much sewn up here, besides maybe a troll, something randomly happen there where he gets to pitch a troll and reanimate that as well. That would be difficult for Marshall to take care of until he gets a ton of creatures in play. At a point, you're looking for just Supreme Verdict.
yeah, the like I said before, 5 turns is a lot. We're down to 4 now. But the grief does have evasion in the form of menace, right? So even if the staff of the storyteller did resolve, made a token, Marshall still needs to put another token onto the battlefield to be able to stop that 3 damage coming through. And uh he has a shark typhoon, but if Jerry has a fatal push, he can make this he can either wait for him to block and kill multiple creatures, or he can use the fatal push as a way to give grief unblockable for the turn.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I wonder how many fatal pushes are in Jerry's deck, but there might be some number. Now we saw Petty Theft deal with the Blood Moon there. It allows Jerry to put a Watery Grave into play untapped as well. So getting that life total down under the number required so he can play his Death Shadows in the future. This also allows him to play the Brazen Bar as well. We'll see what happens with Marshall from here. The thing is, Marshall only has 3 colors of mana, so he wasn't able to prismatic ending the grief. That's just another small little thing that happens a lot with these decks that can be a problem. It does look like Marshall's
Uh,
going to be able to cycle this Shark Typhoon here.
it's also worth noting that this Blood Moon being off the battlefield now gives Marshall access to a second white source for Supreme Verdict if he draws that.
That's a good point. Also, he gets to clear his deck a little bit here. Did he draw all of the prismatic endings or only one of the two that were there? I can't remember if he got all of them or not.
I
So
believe it was just one. It definitely was not all three.
yeah, so Shark
Two
Typhoon.
went on.
Yeah, gonna come in, trade off with the Brazen Bar, but that 3 damage is still gonna come through. Marshall getting down to a precarious 5. Still looking for that same spot that they were earlier where Marshall is, where he's still looking to find a way to deal with this grief. I've been really impressed with the diversity of the threats in the Dimir Shadow deck and just how good they are in the format at dodging. Each one dodges some kind of removal in some kind of way. Ooh, that was a huge draw.
That's very good.
Yeah,
that cleanly takes care of both of the creatures on the battlefield.
So I wonder if it looks like he's just gonna play this safe. Looks like the Prismatic Ending is going to go ahead and take care. I actually kind of like playing it safe here, just in case, because you could Swords of Plowshares the grief, put Jerry to 13, kill the Death Shadow. But if Jerry has some way to lose life in response, then you're just absolutely blown out. And Marshall's going to go ahead and play this one safe and just go ahead and 1-for-1 each one of them because he's still got cards left over in his hand.
Right, but if he has the Prismatic Ending, so if he fires off the swords on the grief first, doesn't that I guess so. It plays out the same way unless, except for casting the Swords of Plowshares first does kind of open it up to counter magic when he doesn't have an answer for grief. So having the 2 prismatic endings means that no matter what, even this is a much safer way to go through it. You're always going to be able to take care of both threats through one piece of counter magic.
A very classic play from the history of Magic here. We have a blue spell being cast into a Pyroblast, into a Hydroblast. Love seeing Hydroblast stop a Pyroblast. It's just good, clean Magic for me. So, thematic, I think is the correct word here. So, Jerry looking for another threat here because it's been draw go for these players the last couple of turns. And that's kind of where Marshall wants to be, not where Jerry wants to be. It looks like Jerry's just got a fetch line. At least he's going to be able to clear some of these cards from top of his deck if he wants to. But it looks like no threat yet again.
Yeah, if we're in Drago, then I believe that is going to favor Marshall over the long term. But Jerry does still have a couple of turns to get back into this. Marshall doesn't really have much going except for a bunch of reactive spells.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jerry's still looking for one of those threats. Really needs to find one as soon as possible here. You don't want to let Marshall draw too many cards here because, like you said, he's going to have some of those reactionary cards. And this is a pretty good one here. It's an Orcish Bowmaster. It's going to put in 2 different bodies while being able to play the instant speed. So we'll see if that's going to actually resolve here. So this looks like, is that another Shark Typhoon? Yeah, it's a full-on Shark Typhoon here, making a 3/3. We'll see. Is Jerry going to want to make an army in response here?
It looks like we're going to, yeah.
It looks like some damage going Marshall's way here, and Marshall's Let's getting a little low here. Got to be a little worried.
I'm interested to see where these are. It looks like they're going to Marshall.
Yep. So Marshall down to 3. Does have the 3/3 Shark into play. I think he does have one of those prismatics still looming in his hand here. So we'll see how this gets played out.
Yeah, this can deal with the Orcish Bowmasters along with the Shark token holding back that 2/2.
Yep, there we go. There's that prismatic. Go ahead and get rid of that. It looks like this. Oh, this is a great one as well. It's a fairy's getting played here from Marshall. This resolves. Let's go ahead and goes and bounce the army, draw a card here. Marshall maybe down to 3, but he's got Jerry down to 7 here, and now he's cooking.
You want to talk about clean answers? Teferi is the cleanest answer, not only to that token, but just Jerry's entire deck. Jerry plays a lot of permission. Now Marshall knows that anything he casts is going to resolve. We do have a reader here.
I was about to make the joke. It actually came up, Jeff. This one's in English, thankfully. This is one of the few cards that apparently we have in English that the opposing player can actually read in this matchup. That card is awesome. So for everybody at home, the way this card works, I'm gonna try to word it correctly. It's probably not gonna happen much in this game. At the end of Jerry's turn, a counter goes on to this artifact, right? He then scries 2. After the scry resolves, Marshall can either let him draw a card, or Jerry will mill the X top cards of his deck, where X is the number of counters that's on the artifact. Any of the cards that get milled that are non-lands, Marshall takes damage for the converted mana cost of those cards. So this is pretty much a one-sided Howling Mine that allows Jerry to scry at the end of turns. Or yeah, it's scry. It's not surveil. It's scry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's scry, but it's so much value. Like the fact that you get to scry, not
Yeah.
only just because with Marshall at 3, Jerry can leave a 3-drop on top of the library and be like, hey, do you want me to draw this or do you want to just die right now? But
Look at the look on Marshall's face. I love it. Because the problem is like, against a lot of the decks in Legacy, it's like the odds of something being that costs 3 or more is extremely low against typical Delver decks in the past. Jerry's version has quite a bit of cards that kill Marshall immediately off the top
it's
of the deck.
so many. And so you might be able to get away with one turn of mill. But
Yeah, I think it's too much to ask, especially Jerry just being this low of a life total. I don't know if Marshall has to take that kind of risk from here.
right, and this card, this Palantir, it just does so much. Honestly, even if it just said at the beginning of your end step, scry 2, it would be kind of powerful, right? Because he gets to scry 2 every turn, gets to dig through his deck for answers. But now it's like, okay, well now, do you want me to draw a card or do you want me to mill? If I mill, you take damage.
Yuri's at 4 here, if I remember correctly, because he just took this 3 down to 4 from the Shark. There is another Shark Typhoon in Marshall's hand here as well.
Looks like there's not enough. There's not enough to kill Marshall on top, but I think it's looking like Jerry wants to leave two damage worth of 2 damage worth of cards on top
Yeah,
because
and yeah, this is the Blood Moon's actually working in Marshall's favor here. He doesn't have to crack those fetch lands here to be able to use mana as well.
yeah,
So
yeah, very big.
yeah. Does he need to worry about Bowmasters here? I don't think so, right? You draw 1 extra card.
Jerry.
Also, it's in Jerry's instep, and there's a Teferi in play, so it doesn't even matter. He can't even cast Bowmasters. Right. Okay. So much is going on. Yeah. With Teferi, it's like, yeah, you can draw because you can't play any of it. So Marshall had that kind of locked up.
Yeah, there were several different ways. I think Jerry also had tapped his only available black source.
Yeah,
that
so
turn.
much going on there. Yeah. So like I said, so the Blood Moon, it looked like it wasn't going to be super impactful because Jerry had access to both of his basics, but it actually is very impactful even with those basics in play because of the fact that it just bottlenecks you so much, right? Like you get one use of your, it's like you get a Lotus Petal every turn for each color, like that's it. You get the one shot at it, barring days or something weird happening. But we're going to be going into a game 3. Let's see, people in chat are asking what happened. It looks like Marshall tied it up there at 1 apiece, and we're going to be going into game 3. Yeah, he died to the Shark. Sorry for everybody in chat.
So one thing that we haven't actually talked about with Marshall Arthur's deck is, have you? I assume you have the deck list in front of you.
I do.
Have you taken the creature column yet?
Wait, there is no creature column.
There is no creature column. But you notice that Marshall won that game via the combat step.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It looks like Comet seems to be in there as just a way to actually win the game and generate creatures for both to actually get in the combat step, but for Staff of the Storyteller. It's I'm kind of sad that we haven't really seen Staff of the Storyteller do anything because it's one of my favorite cards that have been printed in the last couple of years.
So it's one of the ones that always gets me, right? Like, and I see it like starts showing up as like a 3 and 4 of in a lot of these decks in Legacy. I'm like, wait, what? Really? This? And then like, it's just these weird cards get printed every couple of years, and they start getting put in the blue suit mid range control-ish decks. And I'm like, really, this card? And then like you see it play out, and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And
Yeah,
in Marshall's deck, like you're talking about, Comet is kind of like his version of Menskin Boo, and it works so well with Staff of the Storyteller and Shark Typhoon. That's all of it's awesome. Real quick too, Jeff. I know it's not going to happen, but every time I see a deck like this, since Marshall has 4 Shark Typhoons, I always hold up hope, and I know Twitch chat loves this too. I want to see a hard cast Shark Typhoon.
Every single time someone has a Shark Typhoon in their hand, I'm counting the lands. Every time. Like there's nothing I love more than a hard cast Shark Typhoon. If you've got a hard cast, if you have 6 mana and a hard cast Shark Typhoon, and then still have Force of Will and a blue card, just jam it.
Mhm.
Either you're gonna keep that Shark Typhoon for later, or you're getting a 5/5 on whatever
Yep.
stupid thing your opponent casts next turn.
I'll tell you this: I'm Team Hardcast Shark Typhoon. I always look to try to do it. Also, I've been slightly correct in the chat. Apparently, it's white Baleful Strix, not you know.
I guess it is white baleful strikes. It
I can
doesn't
see
have
the. I can get it. Yeah, I can
yeah,
get it.
it doesn't have death touch. It costs 1 more mana to get the card draw. However, um, one of the things that I really like about Staff of the Storyteller is the way the abilities are worded. Uh, Multiple Staff of the Storytellers gets insane very quickly because each one also
There's the next.
triggers
Yeah.
putting a counter on the others.
Oh wow. Yeah, I was supposed to say I had to go back and take a look when you were talking about that. I've never seen 2 in play. I've only seen 1, but I see what you're saying. They get exponential. Oh, okay, that's kind of nuts.
It's yeah. If you the first Staff of the Storyteller is like, oh okay, yeah, you get a 1/1, you get to draw a card later. Like it's pretty cool. It gets the value out of it. But you play a second one, now you're getting another one, and you're 1/1, and you're drawing 2 cards.
Yeah.
If you know you can if you have a Staff of the Storyteller, but you don't have more than 2 mana, you can still cycle Shark Typhoon, get a 0/0, and put counters on your Staff
Yeah.
of the Storyteller.
Absolutely. Can we talk about how clean that transition just was? Like we went from the hand cams getting to watch Marshall, make his mulligan decisions into immediately the smaller screen that was the whole thing comes back up into the that was just an amazing transition. The power of technology here, Anu, you're awesome. We love these streams. Thanks for having us. This was great. And we're 3 for 3 in this match with this the Rug and Triumph on one. This is why you only play one. We're talking about the 2 Delvers always having one on turn one. If you're just gonna have it on turn one all the time, why would you play more?
Marshall is 50-50 in this match on playing Rogren Triumph turn 1 and winning. So I think this is the rubber match for Rogren Triumph.
Yeah, and it's never a great feeling to have the mulligan against the deck that has griefs and thought seizes. But Jerry's not exactly banging down the door here. He's not running out the gates. But Jerry's deck after sideboard can play a little bit of a longer game. And also, I think he's maybe trying to insulate himself a little bit against Blood Moon here as well. Gonna take his time with some of his fetching, make sure he does everything. It does look like he's just gonna go ahead and lower his life total as low as possible here, though.
Yeah, the fact that Marshall just plays so many answers to things, ooh, that's rough. The Bowmaster into the brainstorm is very bad for Marshall. That's that's going to lead to Jerry Thompson getting a 4/4. Marshall is going to immediately go to 16. Um, I don't know if we discussed it on camera, but I know off camera was talking about how just the existence of Orcish Bowmasters has completely ruined a decade of mental shortcuts for me for when to
Yeah,
cast Storm.
yeah, we joked. So this apparently was in response to the Bowmasters, I believe. So I think this is still going to be just a 1/1, but it's like you said. Yeah, you have to change your timing. Like I was actually wondering if when Jerry cracked his fetch and only had 1 mana up, while the abilities on stack, if Marshall was going to do something like play brainstorm then, but you can always just wait too and get extra information and stuff. It doesn't really matter how you time it there, as long as you don't do it after the Bowmaster is in play and resolved.
Yeah,
Then all that stuff. So
with it being an end of turn, it means that if Jerry either you give Jerry the opportunity to cast the Bowmaster, and he does, and then you can cast the Brainstorm, or uh, he just takes the turn back and has just wasted 2 mana, which both of those seem clearly much better for Marshall than the other, but it's not too bad.
yeah, I also wonder if this is one of the situations where Jerry is supposed to hit himself with the Bowmaster trigger since he's at 13. It would have put him to 12, but I'm sure he's gonna be able to find another way. He's got fetch lands and all the nonsense and stuff in his deck, so maybe it's not correct there. but it looks like this second Ponder is going to resolve after the first one got hit by a Pyroblast.
Yeah, it's very interesting because like the just the concept in this matchup of paying yourself for one, because normally in these kind of matchups you expect your life total to not really matter, right? Against like miracles back in the day, your life total didn't matter. Your opponent was not
Yeah.
killing you by swings of one or two.
When
Your
you're
opponent,
dead, you're dead. Yeah.
yeah. When you're dead, it's been over for a while, and they finally found a way to kill you.
Yeah.
Where this version that Marshall's playing seems to play in the margins a lot more, with with the staff of the storyteller and 2 2 3 3 sharks and stuff like that. So it is possible that those those little life points matter, especially you know what we're seeing right now with the swords of plowshares. Marshall has swords in his deck. Jerry paying himself to get out those death shadows means that they just die to swords to plowshares.
Very true. This looks like this brainstorm is going to resolve for Marshall here, and that's huge. He's got a fetch land left over to kind of make this a perfect one. A ponder to behind that to keep going. And now we get a good look at Jerry's hand. I think I caught a glimpse of a blue cantrip there and another Bowmasters as well. So it looks like the 1-1 army is going to go ahead and get across here and then back over to Marshall. Again, we've seen that these games that go a little bit longer might favor Marshall in this matchup, especially if you can get a bunch of mana to play and start playing some of his more expensive threats and stuff like that. So we'll see if Jerry's able to keep up, though, since this is a sideboard game. Looks like a Narset is going to be the first thing to start off this turn here for Marshall as well. I do love the dichotomy of decks having like Bowmasters versus Narsets. It's kind of a fun thing for me to think about. Like, hey, if you draw extra cards, you're going to do extra damage, make big things. And I'm like, wait, you can't draw extra cards now. And I know it's not a Bowmaster deck with Marshall, but it's just funny seeing that from both sides.
Yeah, it is. It is very interesting. I mean, in general, we know that giving your opponent the option to do something, even if that thing's very bad for them, is still worse than not giving them the option at all. But yeah, like it, I'm interested to see what comes off of this. Oh, okay. We
That's
have
a good
a
one.
we have a really good one off of the Narset.
So that's a supreme verdict for everybody at home. So it's going to be able to sweep up a lot of what Jerry's got going on here. And Jerry did point the damage from the Bowmasters at the Narset here, which means the Narset doesn't get to use its ability again. And then even, Jerry's worried about stuff, he gets to actually attack down the Narset as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Marshall is going to, unless Marshall has another swords or a prismatic ending. Um and it looks like he does. Yeah, there's prismatic ending. Okay. So he'll at least be able, even though he's not going to get another card draw off of the Narset. Or nope, there's Force of Will coming back. So I was hoping that Marshall would be able to keep around the Narset, even if he doesn't get another card off of it. But it looks like that option is also off the table.
Yeah, and this is a high cost for Jerry as well. I think he's only got one card left in his hand after this, so he's starting to fall behind in resources, and now he's not going to have a threat as well once Marshall resolves this Supreme Verdict next turn. So we'll have to see if Jerry can get himself. He's in a deep hole right now. He's got to claw his way out. So we'll see if he's going to be able to do that.
Yeah, also something to note that I really like. Kudos to Marshall leaving that Supreme Verdict face up. Big fan of whenever I reveal a card, you can write it down, or I'll just leave it here until I cast a brainstorm. Then when I cast a brainstorm, I'll give you the chance to write it down, and then I'll shuffle it back into my hand. Right?
Yeah,
I think it's a great sign of respect
yeah.
between these two players.
I also think it's important to note how much fighting went over the Narset even at 2 loyalty happened there. Like Marshall tried to use a full card to take care of the army to make sure that his Narset stayed around for at least one more turn. And then Jerry was willing to use a Force of Will plus pitch a blue card from his hand to ensure the Narset went away. And some people might wonder, like, why are you doing that face up into a Supreme Verdict? The thing is like Jerry needs to be able to play this game normally for the rest couple turns. And let's say he doesn't do that there, right? And he doesn't have creatures left over, the Narset stays in play. Every one of Jerry's, like some of his best top decks, are unplayable now. Like you can't ponder, you can't brainstorm correctly for the rest of the game as long as that Narset's in play. And I really like this play from Jerry in fighting over that and just ensuring that his best top decks from here on out are still live draws from him from this point. Plus, it
Even
forces the Supreme Verdict, which is nice.
even throwing away that brainstorm is it kind of shows how powerful that Narset is. Like by the Narset being on the battlefield, this brainstorm is not a card in Jerry's hand.
Right.
So he's basically using the force and pitching away a card that does not exist in his hand to make sure that future ponders and brainstorms do exist and can kind of dig him out of this situation. Um,
So we've got a
not
staff in play finally, Jeff.
oh man, I want another one though. I
Well, we've
want
only
to.
got one so far, so let's see if there's a second one. The last card left over in Marshall's hand is a Plains here. So Jerry clawing his way back into this game. Oh, wow. Okay, so there's the Supreme Verdict off the top. It's going to take care of 3 creatures from Jerry Thompson. The Staff of the Storyteller still in play. This is a rough road for him if to run up here from this point.
So I
Oh,
have a
wow.
feeling, based on the way that played out, that Marshall had an idea
Yeah,
that Supreme
yeah,
Verdict was on top.
yeah, he knew it was there.
But yeah, I before that Supreme Verdict, I thought Jerry was in a pretty good position, especially because Marshall could draw cards, but it would result in an additional counter on the army and taking 1 damage. But now, and that kind of shows what I was talking about before about giving someone permission to do something even if it's bad for them. If he is in a bad situation, he still has the ability to draw more cards to try to find answers in Supreme Verdicts or whatever. Whereas Narset being on the battlefield is just saying, no, you can't do that. Don't even try.
So big play from Jerry here, getting the out there, or however the hell you pronounce this card, into play is going to be very impactful in this game. This is going to allow him to keep up with the cards from Marshall as this game goes. So he's going to be able to keep up in pure card quality and quantity. So and that mill there, yeah, Marshall doesn't take damage there, but Jerry is very happy of not drawing that island. And I want to hark back earlier to Jerry fighting over that Narset so hard. This is exactly what I was talking about. Like Jerry brainstormed last turn and found one of the best cards in his deck in this spot. Also finding another brainstorm in this spot. Imagine if he hadn't been able to attack that Narset or hadn't made the plays to attack that Narset down, and the Narset was just sort of sitting around the board with 1 loyalty here. Jerry would be in a very bad spot.
Yeah, you'd be able to scry every turn, but wouldn't be able to do much else because Marshall just lets him draw, but the draw doesn't happen. Um, it is. It is. I do like with Marshall being an 11, Jerry leaving that land on top. Yeah, it doesn't actually deal any damage, but in the position Jerry's in, drawing or milling that land are essentially the same thing. It's a little bit better to draw it because you can shuffle it away with a brainstorm, but it's to Jerry. He just wants to get that card away, right? You can put it in your hand. That's great for me. I could put it on the in my graveyard, and it's gone both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. This card, like I said, it's been showing up in some sideboards here or there, and I'm glad we're getting to see it in action because it was one of the ones I was like, yeah, I know what this card does. It seems cool. I want to see what it does in some spots, and here's a haymaker for Marshall here. If this Blood Moon resolves, Jerry's in a very, very bad spot.
Yeah, those are all 3 of those lands are watery graves. They are not
Well,
they're
they're
not
all
fetch.
3 about to be mountains, Jeff.
Well, yes. Well, one of them that wasteland might not be a mountain, but yeah, everything else. There we. Oh, we're getting something here.
So it's going to be Brazen Bar. It looks like Petty Theft. It depends on where we're at in the turn. Does
This
Marshall have another main phase here? Yeah,
this would
Marshall's
have
gonna.
in the main phase because Jerry would not have access to that blue mana. If we'd passed from the phase that we were in.
Yeah, so that's what I think they're talking about here. Is like he's like, hold on, I want to use this mana before we switch phases, and I think that's what they're confirming is where they actually are in the turn. Because Jerry still has, mana floating from that. So here comes the Blood Moon. The Blood Moon's going to resolve. The Black Mana will be spent by Jerry, though, so he at least gets a threat into play.
Yeah, it seems like Marshall was saying, "I would like to pass to my second main phase," and then
Yeah.
Jerry
Like, hold on,
used
I
the
still have mana
mana.
floating. Yeah.
Now we have Blood Moon back on the battlefield.
And it does look like Jerry's going to be able to get cast here, but it just shows a Caracas that's not doing anything. If I was Marshall here, I'd just be like, yeah, you can just draw every turn for the rest of the game. Like, there's no reason to ever take damage from this Palantir because Jerry's, like, not locked, but he can't cast any spells from here. So Marshall needs to find a way to deal with this Bowmaster and this army and to be in a really good spot. But it looks like Jerry might be able to limp across the finish line here with these creatures. We're find out. Yeah, it looks like the damage is going to get through. Marshall's going to go down to 4.
It's possible he's got a couple. He does have a couple of turns, but like I said, I was saying before about the island being milled being the same as it being drawn. But now that this Blood Moon is on the battlefield, that island has been milled. Jerry has access to a single basic now.
So I was wondering if like there was ever going to be the mind game where Jerry's like, okay, scry, like puts everything on bottom, leaves something on top, and Marshall was like, hey, I wonder if that's his basic. Should I mill it, or if you could ever take that risk of like Jerry trying to game you? Like it's almost like playing poker here. It's like, am I bluffing? Do I have it?
I think at 4.
Well, hold on. Actually, isn't this legendary? This artifact?
Oh yes, the artifact is legendary. That's true.
Brand new cards. Okay. Okay, sorry for the silence there. We were getting an update from Anu because he wanted to make sure we knew since this is going on because everyone in the chat's freaking out, looking over about this being legendary. This match is for fun. Marshall's team has already won the round, but Jerry and Marshall wanted to finish their game. So, like, yes, this is something that can't happen in the game, and maybe Jerry needs to be, told in the future, hey, that's legendary, just because wouldn't put it past Jerry not knowing because I didn't know until like I started to really think about it. But yeah, this game is a game for fun that they're just finishing out their match.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I guess fortunate for Marshall, especially since with this giant shark, it's the game looks like it's going to swing into his favor.
Look, Jeremy said that is do giant shark Hey, look, see, here we go. This is where you really know that they're playing for fun. Like Jerry's like, hey man, you got a trigger over here too, which I wouldn't put past Jerry doing that anyway because he's a real stand-up dude. But
yeah, like you always my when I'm playing against people, the way I always handle it is you get one.
yeah,
If you miss trigger, the first trigger you miss, I'm like, hey man, you missed it. So that way, when they miss it again, be like, I let you have it last time. Then you're not the bad guy for being the rules lawyer, right? But from Jerry's perspective, having these two orbs on the battlefield, I think in Marshall's position,
they're talking about that right now. They're talking about the there we go. It's been found out that it's like, look at the reactions. They're both like, wait, huh? What?
This might be exactly how delayed we are.
Oh, this is amazing. The players are realizing in real time that this is legendary. He's like, okay. I know Jerry really well that I've played against him. I know his reaction. He's like, well, this card's going to go in the graveyard. They just immediately put it
up. With the battlefield as it was, you have the Blood Moon on the battlefield. Jerry has only access to generic mana and 1 swamp. I think there is no situation in which you just don't let him draw cards for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and so Jerry's showing him his hand. I think they're just gonna giggle about this and possibly move on. Yeah, they're gonna show hands and just go from there because they probably don't want to deal with any of the other stuff that goes along with this.
we are having the hey, this game is for fun and incredibly scuffed right now discussion. So
yeah, seeing them realize it in real time, that might be my favorite thing that's happened today because the looks on both I like how it's like the realization of they both look down. Someone's like, hey, those are legendary. You see both of them look at the card and they do that look at each other, like the knowing look, like
yeah, we both missed this.
Yeah. Whoops.
I know that feeling.
Oh yeah, I've been on the side of that multiple times.
Oh yeah, especially being a legacy player when
we got it. Hey, we did it.
I do not care that this match is for fun. It is now for fun for me.
Twitch chat, we have a hard cash shark typhoon.
Let's go,
ladies and gentlemen. We got them. I want to see this. I want to see the sharks in the chat. Give me some sharks in the chat. Marshall is a man of the people. He could have killed Jerry with that. He's like, no, sir. We're casting this for the lulz. We're giving Twitch chat what they want.
Do we have a force back? No. Okay. Well, it's not on the battlefield.
Boo.
Shot.
Boo. Jerry's still playing. You know, he plays the little whistle blows. It doesn't look like that's what's going to happen. So, despite the outcome of this game and the incredible scuffness of it, as you said, they're still having a nice giggle about the legendary artifact here. Marshall's team is going to move up to 9-1-1. Jerry's team down to 9-2. Both of them still in really, really good spots to make that top 6 as we move into what I believe is the last round of Swiss. Next round, I believe, is the last one, or do they play 2 more? I don't remember exactly how many rounds they're playing here today. Well, it sounds like we're going to have one more round, at least with us two, after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Magic.